I'm so excited to be here with you today and share a tool that I've discovered that has just been so impactful in my life and helped me build better relationships with my friends, my family, and my coworkers. The tool is called the Enneagram, and I came to it around 20 years ago. And I've, been using it in, both my consulting and in speaking. I ended up writing a book about it called Teamwork 9.0. And today I want to share with you a very specific aspect of it. And that is how you can use it to build rapport and trust with others. So when I was giving a talk a few years ago with a group that was Enneagram aware, so they understood what the Enneagram is, they understood what their type is, and I asked them, when you were in high school, what was the type, the Enneagram type of your best friend? And we went around the room, and, almost without, any misses, the best friend was the same Enneagram type as the person. Interesting. So they say birds of a feather flock together. Well, maybe that's true also for Enneagram types. Maybe Enneagram Type One likes hanging out with other ones, and twos like twos, and threes like threes. So what's going on there? Why is that we could be so drawn to somebody with the same style as ours? What are the good things about that? And then also, what are the pitfalls with that? So that's what I want to talk about today, is how to understand your own type, but also be aware that you may be missing opportunities to build rapport with others by being too immersed in your own type. And I'm going to give you some tools for how to reach out and build rapport with all Enneagram types. So, like I said, I wrote a book, Teamwork 9.0, and this was the culmination of work that I did. I started my career as a technologist. I became an engineering manager, and I realized on that journey that getting things done with teams was more about the technology, is more about the team than the technology. And I started studying different tools, leadership tools, teamwork tools, and that's when I came across the Enneagram. And the Enneagram, it's an old system, goes back thousands of years, and but it's become popularized lately, I'd say in the last century or so, and it's known as a personality system predominantly, but it is more than that. Today we'll focus on some of the personality aspects, but my book is actually written about using the Enneagram to get teams to solve problems, and that's one aspect of the Enneagram that isn't often talked about, which is why I felt compelled to write about it. So why even learn the Enneagram? So the first thing that really occurred to me was once I learned the Enneagram, I got to know myself better than I had ever known myself. So you really get to know yourself deeply, and you get to accept yourself. And once you know and accept yourself, it just makes it that much easier to understand others and accept them for who they are. And I think that is one of the key aspects to the theme of this conference, the Kindness Conference, is by starting with yourself and being kind to yourself and acknowledging, your own, and accepting yourself, it allows you to build on that and be kind and accept others. And the other, real important issue is style diversity, because once we know how to get along with other types and we can build teams, style diverse teams are going to be stronger and more resilient. And they're the teams that are going to be the most successful. So before we go on, I would like to know from the people in the audience who is familiar with the Enneagram. So Cecilia, Mari-Lyn, I know both Mari-Lyns are familiar. How about you, Ivan?
A little bit.
Great. So if you're interested, you can at some point, you don't need to do it now, but there is an Enneagram test that I have that you're welcome to use. And it's enneasurvey.com, and I'll put it into chat right now. If you're interested in exploring your type more, I definitely suggest that you check that out. And if you go in there and you take the quiz, oftentimes you'll find that you score highly on maybe 2 or 3 different types. And what I advise that you do when you do that is to, understand what those types are and explore them a little more deeply. Every person has a starting point. So you by understanding the ones that you score highly on, then that gets you close to understanding what your starting point is for the Enneagram. And then once you understand your starting point, then you can go and access some of the other types. But before I go on, does anybody have any questions so far? We're good? All right. So here's the, I'm going to now share my screen again. And this is the Enneagram diagram. Now you can see that there are 9 types represented here. And, each one of these types is a certain dynamic. And when you are working with a person of that dynamic, there is a tool that you can do called mirroring. And by mirroring the type, then you can build rapport with them. So there's a lot, when we started and we said the birds of a feather flock together, right? So that's kind of your natural rapport building mechanism, is that you're attracted to people like yourself and they're attracted to you because you're essentially reflecting, certain aspects that they find compelling. And you can do this on many different levels. You can do this on, certainly style. People will often dress similarly. They'll often talk similarly. And also, I think people of certain Enneagram types are just attracted to each other, and they'll work together. So if you're trying to build rapport with a person who's not your type, then you need to know their type in order to understand how best to connect with them. And in the last session that we had, that Carlos was so great, and he talked about, building the skills of sales and marketing, for instance. Well, the Enneagram can also be used as a sales and marketing tool, because if you match your style to the person that you're working with, then they're going to be more inclined to want to do business with you. And so that's another way that you can think about using the Enneagram, both friends, family, teams, and even sales. So let's start with Enneagram Type One. And the Enneagram Type One is the type that wants to get things right. That's the most important thing to them. Not only that, is they're often the type that is most sensitive to when things aren't right, when things are wrong. And so the one will be the Enneagram Type One will be the one to say, hey, that isn't right. That's not how it should be. It should be this way. Now, if you're working with a Type One, it's great to acknowledge that, hey, you're right. It isn't the way it should be, and meet them where they're at in terms of, their perspective. And by listening and understanding, where they're coming from, then you'll be able to understand why they don't think it's right. Now, a great way to change the conversation with the one from focusing on what's wrong and getting to how it could be is to say, okay, well, that's wrong. What is your vision for how things should be? And that changes their mindset to start to focus on a future where things are resolved. And that can build energy with the Type One so that they will want to move in that direction and not necessarily dwell on just the things that are wrong. So I want to encourage anybody who has any questions as we go to answer or ask them. You can ask them either in chat, but I want to ask a question. Does anybody know a Type One, know that personality style where they focus on the things that aren't the way they should be? I notice Cecilia's. What's your experience, Cecilia? You can chime in.
Well, Type Ones, my experience with Type Ones is they are, I think, as you said, really good at working with a vision, but then not necessarily good at or patient with being with what is not working well as we walk towards that vision. And they can't create a lot of tension around that. And
right.
And sometimes judge. I think the challenge is really finding how to cope with these things that bother us in a way that is smart and productive.
Right.
I want to hear from you on that.
Yeah. Do you identify as a Type One?
I am a Type 2, but I'm wing one, so I have a lot of the one energy. I can feel it viscerally.
Oh, got it. Right. Yeah. So that's a great point. The two is next to the one, and they can carry that frustration that ones will carry. We don't have time to go into another aspect of the Enneagram called the triads, but the one is in the anger center or triad, And so they are dealing with a lot of internal anger, and it's that little voice inside of their head that's saying, hey, you know, that's not right, that's not how it should be. And that often manifests as frustration and tension in them as they're dealing with that. So so definitely, you know, if you're working through that, then you want to, you know, understand the underlying root of that. You know, why is it causing that, so that you can deal with it, and then try to get your mind to go beyond that frustration towards that world that you can visualize where that's no longer the case, where that problem is solved. And often if you're a 2, then often those problems are centered around, you know, helping and assisting people. And you just carry that with you as you're trying to help people, but you can feel blocked. Does that make sense?
Yes, Matt, thank you so much.
Sure. So, you know, here's some things to remember when you're dealing with 1s. Is, you know, 1s are very self-critical. They have that angry voice in their head. So, you know, they're highly sensitive. They welcome constructive criticism, but usually they will have already criticized themselves a lot more than you will. So by pointing something out that isn't right, you know, you are just reminding them of, you know, how things aren't right. So you want to be a little careful when you have that kind of conversation. Also, 1s are very detail oriented, and they like accuracy and precision. And so when you're working with a 1, you want to bring on your wear your accuracy hat, so that, you know, you're talking to them essentially in their language of precision and accuracy. All right, so let's.
Yeah, Matt.
Yes.
Matt. Yes, I've had some interactions with 1s, and yes, you need to be sensitive, or like mirror them. You need to kind of it's hard for me to mirror a 1 being a 7, but you have to mirror them.
Yes.
Not act like you're 7. And also, the other thing is, when you said birds of a feather flock together, yeah, I agree with that. It's really hard to find. When I find a 7, it's rare.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't come across a lot of 7s. So when I find a 7, I don't say, woohoo, you're a 7. No, I haven't used that in my language, but it's like refreshing to find people that are in the same Enneagram as you. I mean, I haven't thought of it as Enneagrams, but in the same spirit of
yes,
of operating, whatever that is. Yes.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, you know, you coming from the point of view of the 7 working with the 1, right? The 7, you know, they want everybody to be happy, right? And so, you know, their inclination is to say to the 1, don't worry, it's going to be fine. It'll all work out, right? That's what the 7, you know, that's kind of the natural way the 7 would approach that. But that's not going to work for the 1, right? The 1's like, no, it's not. It's wrong, right? So you're going to get that tension right there. So, you know, as a self-aware 7, you know, understanding that, you know, that's not where their mind is. Their mind isn't in everything's going to be fine. They're focused on the thing that is wrong. If you want to help them through that, then, you know, you want to kind of first of all meet them where they're at. Now, the interesting thing,
it's like tippy-toeing. It's like tippy-toeing around them. You got to tippy-toe.
A little bit, yeah. But here's the good news, because I see 7s and 1s work together so well.
Yes.
they are
Yeah,
really
right,
good
right.
because they're so complementary, right? One
Yeah,
is very detail oriented and solving all these problems, while the 7 is more big picture and kind of looking out towards a fun future, right? So they're really
Right.
complementary. So when you
That's
can
true.
build that relationship with the 1, if you're a 7, you can build that relationship with a 1, then it's going to be a really powerful. Strong relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Right on. You know your stuff, Matt.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the 2, because I know we have a couple 2s here, a pair of 2s. So, you know, the 2s, they're, and you know, we're I would say the 2, the 3, and the 4, we're moving now into the feeling center of the Enneagram. So what we're dealing with now is feelings and emotions. And for the 2 in particular, you know, the 2 wants to have an emotional connection with the people around them. And the way that they do that is by helping them. If you're a 2 and you help somebody, then that, you know, you'll, in return for that, you will build that emotional connection. And the way that that's often demonstrates itself is in appreciation. Now, I think, you know, we're at the kindness conference, so I would expect there's going to be, you know, a lot of 2s interested in kindness, because it's really central to the dynamic of the 2, is that helping nature of, you know, wanting, you know, people to feel that nice emotional connection. So, Cecilia, does that resonate with you?
Yes, completely.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no wonder I'm a coach, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. But, you know, you want to help people. You know, the 2s have a sense for how to help people. They have a sense for what people need. Often the 2's sense of what people need is stronger than the person's own sense of that, which is why, you know, being a coach is perfect occupation for a 2, because you will just have this wonderful understanding of how to help your clients. And I know, you know, Mari-Lyn Harris, who is the sponsor and host of this conference. She also identifies as a 2, and she puts so much energy and love into creating this format where we can talk about these important topics. And so, big thank you to Mari-Lyn for doing that. I want to just take this opportunity right now, because we're talking about the 2s.
Thank you, Matt.
So,
that's really good at giving appreciation.
and now, how it's, you know, one of the things about building rapport with 2s is it's not that hard to build rapport with 2s, because 2s want to build rapport with you. They are just going out of their way to build rapport with you. So don't get in the way. Just don't get in the way of them building rapport with you. They're natural rapport builders. So, you know, and if, you know, one of the things that, you know, I identify as a 6, a type 6. And so I'll tell this, you know, brief story about a 2 that I worked with. And this is one of the stories that really taught me the power of the Enneagram. I worked at a company, and there was one fellow, whenever I would print something out, he would hear the printer go, and then he would walk over to the printer, he would grab the paper off the printer, he'd look who printed out, and then he would deliver it to their desk. And, so the first time, this happens, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. That's really nice of you. Right. But then it continues to happen. Now, this guy, he's the VP of sales for the company. Right. So I'm starting to feel bad. Like, I know you're busy and I can take care. I can get the printing off the printer myself. Wrong. Right. So what did I just do there? I cut off that opportunity for the two to help me. Right. And I wasn't appreciating their kindness. And it's not where I did appreciate it. I just felt bad, because that's where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning the Enneagram right at this time. And now I'm having this troubled relationship with the VP of sales. And I'm thinking, maybe he's a 2. So I tried to experiment. I said, walk in the morning. And I needed to write an email to, I wrote lots of emails to clients, but I picked one email. And before I sent it out, I sent it over to the VP of sales. And I asked him, would you review this email before I send it out to the client? I just want to make sure that it looks good to you. Bingo. Became best friends. That's all I had to do. Is I needed to allow him to help me. And if there was nothing obvious, I would just find something to ask him for help. And he loved that. So that just gives you a little bit of insight into how to get along with a type 2. Does that make sense to either of our 2s here?
Yeah. Well, it makes sense for somebody trying to, I guess, rekindle that relationship they blew, but yeah.
And I think, sorry. Yeah, and I think what resonates is so many people nowadays feel like they don't want to ask for help because they understand everyone is busy, and we choose are like, please ask for help.
Exactly. Right. Yes. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is key, and 2s need that emotional connection. So definitely keep that in mind when you're working with your lovely 2s.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to.
I will say, Matt, if I don't mind, is that that I'm noticing now that when people don't ask for help or just constantly criticize me, I am dropping them off, like saying, "Okay, next, you're next," right. Because I just I'm getting to the point I don't care. It's not I don't care, but it's just that it comes to that point where you have to just sort of say, I can't keep sitting here waiting for them to ask for my help. And when they're just dissing me, right?
Right.
So it's learning not to take it personal and just moving on.
That is such a good point, because and that is really a path of growth for the 2 is to not take things so personally, having that realization that not everybody is coming at it from that same point of view of kindness and emotions. I'm in the head center, right? So I'm in my thoughts. I'm not in my feelings. And so I have to be super aware of that when I'm working with people in the 2s or the 3s or the 4s, because the feelings are more important. That's their starting point. So let's talk about the 3. The 3, they're not after appreciation. They're after acknowledgement for their accomplishments. So how to get along with the 3? Recognize them for their accomplishments. It's pretty straightforward with the 3s, right? And if you're working with 3s, you want to provide them with opportunities to succeed. Now, for 3s, failure is not an option. So you want to keep them focused on the things, where they are likely to succeed, because if it gets, to a point where it's not going to succeed, that's not a good situation for a 3. So you just need to be aware of that when you're working with your 3s. Another interesting thing about the 3s is they're, and I'd say this is true with the 2, the 3, and the 4. Remember, they're in these feelings and emotional center. So it's really important what other people think for the 3s. And so, when they're just trying to decide which way to go, they're looking for feedback. They're looking for feedback, as to, what you think about that, because that will help them decide how to proceed. Because if they're moving in a direction that is aligned with your own direction, and then they succeed at that, then they're pretty assured they're going to get that recognition for that accomplishment that they so desire. Does that make sense? So that's the way to align yourself with the 3 and build rapport with the 3 and work with the 3 well, is to, have, they're very action oriented, very goal oriented. So share goals and then work together towards meeting those goals. You're going to get along swimmingly with the 3s in your life. All right, let's go to the 4. Still in this emotional triad, but now it's internal emotions. So they have a lot of feelings roiling around inside of them. If you ask a 4 how you're feeling, the 4's going to go, I'm feeling fine. But what they're really thinking is, what a crazy question. I'm feeling the clouds in the sky. I'm feeling the light falling on the wall. I'm feeling the noise in the background. I'm feeling my dog sitting next to me. I'm feeling all this stuff. But if I told you that, you would think I'm crazy. So I just say, I'm feeling fine. So that's what you need to understand when working with the 4s, is they want to have conversations about feelings, and it's, that's where you can meet them. And because, especially in our culture, often feelings are not considered highly, right? It's like, don't. You don't need to feel that way, or people dismiss how people feel in our society quite frequently, and that's really challenging for 4s. So what you want to do is not do that with your 4s, and you want to meet them where they're at. Now, because they've been trained over years to not bring up feelings, because people are going to dismiss them, they can be very cautious about doing that. So what you can do is talk about your own feelings. They'll love that. Talk about your own feelings, and they'll like, oh, and that's a way to engage in feelings without, testing them and making them feel, uncomfortable. But then, as you expose your own feelings and maybe your own vulnerabilities, then that's how you start to connect with the 4, and they'll be more inclined to open up with you and express what they're feeling, and they're feeling a lot. So be prepared. So any questions about the 4s or the 2, 3s, and 4s? So the feelings types. All right. So let's go now to move over into the head space. And now we're getting to the type 5. And for the people in the headspace, the 5, the 6, the 7, they're in their thoughts, and the underlying issue that they have is anxiety. So they're in their head and they're feeling, that anxiety. So that's what they're doing, is they're processing that anxiety. So for the type 5s is, they don't want to ever appear uninformed. This is, one of their biggest fears. It's going to cause them anxiety. So that's why 5s tend to be on the quiet side. If I don't talk, then you won't know if I'm informed or not. But it also, that underlying anxiety will compel them to study things very, very deeply. And that is a way to connect with the type 5s in your life, is find out the things that really fascinate the 5s in your life and ask them about that, because they will have developed expertise after studying it so long. And then by asking them about their expertise and making them, feel like, wow, you really have mastered this information, that is a great way to build rapport with 5s. So any questions? I'll move through the rest of these relatively quickly, unless there's a particular question.
Do the 5s like to repeat this knowledge they have often?
They do. They like to repeat it, but they like to repeat it mostly to their peers, right? They don't suffer fools. So they're going to find, like if they're into, let's just say as an example, into beekeeping, okay? So they're going to know everything about beekeeping, and they're going to want to hang out with other people who keep bees so that they can compare notes and understand all the tricks of the trade of keeping bees and making the best tasting honey and keeping your hive healthy in the winter, and that will get them very excited and get them to open up. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. I think my boyfriend, Mari-Lyn, is a 5 and a 1. Mari-Lyn Harris, I think Bill's a 5 and a 1. Don't you think Bill's a 5? Mari-Lyn's muted. Anyway, yes, I get it. Yeah, yes. You're right. You're right on task.
There you go.
Your stuff, Matt.
I think he's a 5.
Like
5, yeah. So yeah. This is your guide to staying, connected with your guy.
Yeah, almost 40 years with a boyfriend. 40
nice.
Years.
Well, you certainly did a good job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, now let's go to the type 6. So I can speak with particular expertise on this one because I am a type 6. And, again, it's anxiety. Mm-hmm. And for type 6s, the way we address our anxiety is if we know what's going to happen, our anxiety goes down. So we're always thinking about the future. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And when I get together with my type 6 friends, that's what we do. We just sit and we have conversations about all the different things, all the possible different things that could happen. And we just love being in that space of, oh, this could happen or that could happen. Oh, and now, it's anxiety that's driving us. So what we're trying to do is anticipate and avoid risks and bad outcomes, right? So that's kind of what we're doing, because we want to find a path forward where it's predictable, it's consistent, and our anxiety stays down. So those are some tricks for building relationships with type 6s. Oh, and I say here, no surprises. When I was, I would say it was probably in kindergarten. Pardon me?
I was going to say like this morning.
Yeah, right. I've grown out of it a little bit, but so here's the type 6, right? I'm when I was growing up, I had a babysitter, and my mom was a single working mom. She'd drop us off in the morning, and then she'd come pick us up after work, and I would spend the day with the babysitter. Love the babysitter. She was terrific. And so on my birthday, what does she do? She holds a birthday party. And so I come home from school and surprise! There's cake and people. And so what does the 6 do? Ah! It was the worst thing. It was the worst thing. I still remember it to this day, just bawling my eyes out, and everybody's there to throw me a birthday party, to celebrate, have fun, right? Why is this kid just bawling? Well, because that kid was a type 6 and he didn't like surprises. So
okay, so I won't drop off any more goodies to your house without calling you first.
I always appreciate your goodies, Mari-Lyn. So that's what you have to, it was interesting. I think Carlos mentioned this earlier in his talk. He said, I will help my clients and guide them through. So this is what, if you have clients that are 6s, you need to spell out how things are going to work step by step. That's exactly what the 6 is looking for in a relationship. All right. Well, I could go on about the 6s, but does anybody have any questions? Okay. So let's go to the 7, right? Now, we talked a little bit about the 7. We have a couple 7s here. And, so again, they're in the anxiety, right? You don't sense it as much, but, what they're doing is processing their anxiety by, hey, how are you doing? Are we good? If we're good, my anxiety goes down. So that's why it's often called external anxiety, because that anxiety actually comes from outside of themselves in relationship with those around them. And as long as the relationships around them are fun and positive, anxiety goes down. What was your motto, Mari-Lyn?
Well, they're the ambassadors of fun, the twins there, and it's 2 rules: fun always, and never worry or stress.
Perfect.
But that doesn't mean that it's easy to do the second one.
That's right. That is right.
For Sister Carol, I've mastered it a little bit more. I've mastered that because I came up with the title, and so if you come up with your branding, you have to live up to it. Right. But that is classic 7 branding. So like you see on my screen, my virtual screen, you see how I have the Fun Sisters there. Do you see us? Yep. And then just to mix it up, I put another picture there, and then I put another picture here. I like showmanship. It's like I like to show off.
Well, and 7s, You and your sister love being around each other because, you're both sevens. I mean, it's birds of a feather, right? And it's such a beautiful relationship that you have, and that you've been able to maintain that relationship and brand yourselves in that positive, fun way it's very inspiring.
Yeah, people, I was at Calvary Church. It's open to public. They had 300 members in March, and now they have 1,300 members attending church since May. And I get there, and this person says, "Hi, Ambassador of Fun." They said, "We've met you at other events," and people say, "Hi, Fun Mary. Hi, Fun Mary." So yeah.
If you're trying to get along, I said earlier, twos want to build rapport with you.
Yeah.
Well, there's two types that go out of their way to build rapport. And that's the type 2 and the type 7, because they want to have a good relationship with you. So all you have to do is not get in their way and let them build rapport with you. If you do, I promise you, you will be delighted and you'll have a lot of fun. The thing that sevens don't like is they don't like to dwell on negativity.
Yeah.
So you stay away from the negative stuff and just focus on the fun, positive stuff, right?
Well, actually, Ivan said, "Oh, are you the lady in Rotary? That's the lady of humor." I said, "Yeah, I got a new title. I got a new brand now, the Lady of Humor. I got a new title."
I love it. I love it.
So we connected. It's amazing how a brand or a title, can connect you faster than just Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, thank you, Matt.
You bet.
You can move on.
Okay. With your permission. Thank you. So now we're going to move back into the 8, the 9, and the 1. Now we started with the 1, and they're in the intuitive center. And remember what the issue there was anger. Well, now we're moving back into that center where the issue is anger, and we start off with the 8. Now the 8. If you want to get along with an 8, you want to focus on action and you want to get to the point. They don't, the 8 already has kind of an intuitive sense for what they want to do. And so they don't want to have a lot of conversation. They don't want to have a lot of debate. Blah, 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 right? That's not where they're coming from, right? They literally think in bullet points. And if you look at the slide here, you can see I've tried to just keep as few words as possible on the slide to make the point that that's how they think. They think in bullet points. So just get to the point. If they have questions, they'll ask. They probably won't because they already know what they want to do. So just say what you need to say and let them get on with it, right? And I say that they're in that anger center, and because you'll see with 8s that anger is a tool that they frequently use, and they use it when they feel like things aren't going, in the direction that they think. They're starting to feel like they're losing control, because that's really what's underlying this. Is they want to keep control of the situation. So if they feel like they're out of control, then they're going to start to use anger, and they're going to start raising their voice, and they're going to start pointing at you. They're going to start pounding the table, and all those anger tools to try to rein back in control of the situation. So, but when you're building rapport with them, best thing to do is to just kind of go along with them. Right? Just because they have a very strong sense of where things should be going. So if you just kind of go with the flow with them, then that will work very well.
So Matt,
yes,
it's interesting. I think the 8s that I know, yes, every brief point is accurate, but they can write lengthy emails to us.
They can. They can.
They want us to be get her done and on task and on point, but they can go on and on and on and on and on.
Right. Right. And some of that is learned behavior for them, right? Because, they have come to understand that not everybody, communicates the same way they do. And so they don't want to have a lot of conversations. So they've just learned, okay, I'm just going to spell it all out. And that's going to satisfy the 1s and the 5s and the 6s and 2s. And, it will get all the information out. And then, hopefully it minimizes conversations so you can get to action. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go now to our 9s. Again, in that anger intuitive center, but the 9s want to make sure that any conflict in the environment is minimized. So that's what they're sensitive to. They're trying to eliminate conflict. They're highly sensitive to it. And they are anticipating, possible conflict by knowing everybody's perspective so well. That is really their gift. It's interesting because, like if you want to go to lunch with a type 9. Okay, where do you want to go to lunch? I don't know. Where do you want to go to lunch? No, they're not going to want to share where they want to go to lunch, because if they actually shared where they're going to go to lunch, they want to go to lunch, there might be a conflict. So they're going to put it back on you. Well, where do you want to go to lunch? And then, a few more people show up and say, okay, type 9, where do you want to go to lunch? And now they're like, oh my goodness. Well, I don't know. Where do you guys want to go to lunch? And then the group will go to the type 9. You get to choose. It's your birthday. You choose. And the type 9 is now like, the mind is racing furiously. Well, that person likes Mexican food. That person likes Italian food. That person likes Chinese food. That person likes Thai food. They're thinking about what's the thing that I can pick that everybody will like. The last thing that they're thinking about is what they like. The last thing. They're trying to minimize conflict and create the most harmony in the group. So, and this is one of the keys for getting along with 9s. Don't push it. Get to know them. Get to know what they like. They'll let you know after a while. And then you can suggest, I'd really like to go to Mexican food today. And the 9 will go, oh, that sounds good. And that you'll know that they like Mexican food, so they don't have to assert themselves, and they can just go and enjoy the Mexican food. Does that make sense for your type 9s? Yes. So that is 1 through 9 and a whirlwind tour of rapport building with the Enneagram. Again, if you're interested, you can go to enneasurvey.com for the quiz. I've also, in this presentation, if you're going to share the slides later, I've written a series of blogs, one for each of the Enneagram types, for how to build rapport and connect with each type. So that is a resource that you're welcome to use. And